All of this is to say it didn't come with like no trials. Even later on in my career, I've even been fired for not any patient care related thing, but really for a conference call, which is really ridiculous. So, I mean, I feel like I've gone through a lot, which has been really great to teach me never to trust the job you have. You're very expendable. Even as a nurse, you can be easily replaced, and never basically live paycheck to paycheck, because there's going to be a time when you're probably going to need the money that you've saved. And I feel like I've learned that at 26 years old with the first layoff.
You're listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast, where you'll hear the stories and interviews of everyday millionaires. We'll unveil their decisions, their strategies, and their current portfolio allocation. Now to your hosts, Clark Sheffield and Jace Mattinson.
Welcome back to another episode of the Millionaires Unveiled podcast. This is episode number 164. Clark, how's it going? What's going on in your world?
Good. Pretty well. Nothing too much. Nothing new here. Getting into December, year-end. Going to do a year-end net worth update. So that'll be fun. Kind of a weird year if you're tracking your net worth monthly or even quarterly, right? You dip down and now you dipped right back up.
Yeah, totally. We've had several millionaires, kind of talk about that. And you didn't go negative during COVID, did you?
Did I lose money?
No, did you go negative? Like negative net worth?
Oh, man, I got close. I was like, it was close, but I stayed in the positives. Didn't quite get to the red.
Me too, man. It got a little nerve-wracking there. I think it was like February, man. I remember being in a hotel and the market was just dropping like a rock. And I was like, oh, man. And I was like, man, I got some cash on the sidelines. Do I play it now or not? And, trying to time. But I still had all this. I was planning on investing. Just like, do I do it now or do I not? And then obviously March came around and it just got crushed, right at the end of right at the beginning of the pandemic and stuff. And now we've seen quite the bull run since, at least mid-May, June? Yeah,
crazy how much it's come back. Yeah, probably. Yeah, when did it start coming up? I think it started turning the corner really at the beginning of or mid-April rather. But yeah, crazy, especially in the last month and a half here.
Yeah, and we've had, Airbnb IPO, DoorDash IPO. We've had some interesting IPOs and some other interesting SPACs that have taken place too over the last few months. It's just been very interesting market and stuff. Does it change your investment strategy at all going into 2021?
So I kind of dabbled in some of the SPACs just for fun. I don't know anything really about them, which is, I guess, an interesting investment. But part of me was just, hey, take a little bit of risk and see if there's some reward. But has Airbnb already done their IPO?
Yeah, I think it just Wednesday or Thursday of last week.
Okay, so just barely. And how did it perform? I didn't see.
I don't know either. I didn't look. I know DoorDash was about the same time thing as like Wednesday DoorDash. I think they were priced at like, I don't know, $102 a share I saw. It was like raising 27 to 30 some billion dollars or something. Same thing on Airbnb. So those will be interesting ones to watch, right? Like Airbnb, especially that business. I mean, they took a massive hit at the beginning of the pandemic. I mean, just losing I think they had to do like $1 billion+ in refunds. And cut, much like Marriott did. I mean, Marriott hospitality, they just had to cut and got profitable this last quarter, or just barely, which is pretty phenomenal. It'll be a great case study in the future, if anybody wants to dig into the numbers there and stuff, because those businesses took a significant hit. And when you've got a cruise ship that large and you've got to cut expenses, I mean, it takes a while, and those companies did it extremely quickly.
Totally. And the airlines too, right? Amazing how fast you're able to cut expenses when you're burning. I mean, some of them are burning, like over $100 million a day.
Yeah.
It's crazy money when you start thinking about that. $100 million a day.
I know.
Insane.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with the cruise companies and some of those other ones that have essentially been out of business for 8 months, 9 months, 10 months. Right. I mean, weird year, but any goals that you're going to set going into 2021 for yourself and financially, or anything you're changing?
Yeah, I'm still working on them. Have you finalized yours?
Nah, still working, man. It'll be probably another couple weeks before I kind of finalize. My goals are really actually always kind of a work in progress. I reevaluate them every month. Obviously, at the year, there's different things I check, but I've really tried to adopt, a lot more of a, David Osborne style of goal setting, and he was episode 100, and so I spend a lot more time than I ever did on it's not just creating goals, but creating the habits and putting myself in the situation to be able to accomplish those things. So it takes a lot of time to think through it and put my schedule together and make those habits really habits instead of just like, oh, hey, I'm trying to reach this, this peak of this goal or whatever.
Sure. Right. Agreed.
So on today's show, we've got Chloe. She's a nurse practitioner, a net worth of just over $600,000. Got $100,000 of that in cash right now. Most of her equity investments are in U.S. stocks, over 80% We discuss her career journey and goals to gain financial independence. It's going to be a great episode with her. Last week we had David. He's recently retired on a net worth of $6.4 million. He's about $2 million in real estate, $3 million in IRAs, one of the higher IRA balances that we've had on the show. He's got $600,000 in deferred compensation and also has some self-directed IRAs, which he plans to use for real estate investment opportunities. So great episode with him. So if you're interested in that, go check that out. Once again, we got several opportunities in real estate coming up here, multifamily, commercial. If you're interested, reach out to us, get on a call and walk through some things with y'all. Appreciate those that have reached out already and continue to do so. If you're interested to be on the show, reach out to us, millionairesunveiled@gmail.com. We'd love to schedule a time with you to have you on the show and dig into your story and your net worth. But without any further delay, let's get into the episode with Chloe. Chloe, do you want to just give us a little bit about your background and what you're up to now?
Yeah. So I'm actually a nurse practitioner, lived in Connecticut, moved out to Washington for higher pay, and just on the rat race to try to stop working.
Awesome. A little bit of geo arbitrage to start us off. So what's your net worth today?
My net worth today, like literally today, was $641,000. So that's gone up since March of 2020. So I'm pretty pleased, but not a millionaire yet.
Yeah, I know we tend to feature those that are well on their way, and I know you'll be there super soon. So let's break that down a little bit. The 640, how is that broken up?
So I've got about 108 sitting in cash, so 108,000, which is uncomfortable, but I guess I'll start out with that. I want to invest it, but we're kind of saving for a house down payment, or maybe use it in real estate because I have no real estate. So right now that's kind of just sitting. It's kind of our security blanket at the moment, given that a lot of craziness has happened this year. So that's in cash. And then I have 510,000 invested in various stocks, but mostly like 88% US stocks.
Now, are those individual stocks that you've purchased in a taxable account or Robinhood type account, or are they in a retirement type of vehicle?
They're in a bunch of things. So my husband has a retirement vehicle. He has a 401k. I have a 403b and a 457, which I've learned is kind of like the gravy on top. So I kind of am double dipping in pre-tax investment vehicles, I guess. And then we've got some in a Roth and some in traditional IRAs. We're not at all in Robinhood or anything like that, but we do have a couple of individual stocks bought through Charles Schwab and Vanguard. So I have a little Tesla, only 4,000. So it's like really just nothing. And then he actually has more that I discovered today than I thought he had. So he has got about 17,000 in this AMD stock that has really increased quite big. I think he put in 4,000 and it's now 17. And then Infotech stocks, he's got about 43,000 in that, but he feels pretty strongly. The rest is mostly in VTSAX. I think because I've rolled over some previous 401ks, it's like a dabbling in REITs. There's a little bit of alternatives. There's a little bit of like some bonds and stuff, but so minor, it's like 1%.
So, Chloe, I want to get into the individual stock picks a little bit. Is that something that y'all had started, let's just say when you graduated college, or is that something that's evolved over time as you've kind of built up your net worth and decided that you can take some different risks?
Yeah, so my dad actually started a investment vehicle. It was just a brokerage account. It was actually probably poorly invested, but he started it when I was 5. And he put in, I think, minimal amounts of money, $50 a month or something, whatever he could afford. And that was supposed to be for my college fund. And I ended up not using it for college. So that kind of started off, not only did I have no debt coming out of college, which was purely, I would say luck, but I did have no debt coming out. I did actually get to start off with about $24,000 that he gifted me. So that was like very propelling. And he always told me that I could always own a little bit of Disney. I could always own a little bit of things, but we never actually acted on it, which is, I hope to do that with my like future children, because if we did, I think I would have learned a great lesson. But I was aware of what investing is, and I knew I had this money. So once I started to learn more about the points that like they charge you, the fees, I'll say fees. Once I started learning about high fees, I then removed that money from the high fee mutual account that he had, mutual fund, and I moved it to an index fund. And that was at like 25 years old. I had already started putting money into a 401k when I started working as a nurse at 21 years old. But I wasn't really heavily investing because I thought like 10% was great and everyone told me it was great. So I started at 21, and then I think I was just doing I kind of forget, but I think I was just doing the retirement date funds because that was easy for a 21-year-old to understand. And I was choosing like 2050 or something like that. But then I kind of learned a lot about VTSAX and how just broad-based index funds would give me a big swath of the market. So I started moving stuff over. Whenever I had put it into traditional IRA, I would then move it into VTSAX. I bought Tesla probably 5 years ago, I think. It really hasn't moved up that much. It actually, I think, is negative, but I have to double check that. And then my husband bought AMD stock a while ago, and it has done really well. The infotech stocks, I think he's just started. Now that he feels like we're on a good path, I think he feels a little bit more comfortable investing in things that he like truly believes in. But it is an index fund of infotech stocks, but to me, it's like something I'm not familiar with. So I think I like to play it a little bit safer, but he definitely would like to take more risks to earn faster.
I might add, you probably should check that Tesla account. Tesla's been on a tear lately, so I highly doubt you're underwater on that one if you bought 5 years ago. It's closed over like 1,500. I think it's probably been the hottest stock in 2020, definitely during the pandemic for sure. But I think they report earnings. We're recording this in the middle of July, late July, and they report earnings tomorrow post close. So who knows what'll happen then? But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So I want to discuss a little bit, because you bring up you and your husband and doing finances, investing. What were the conversations like when y'all started, and did you have different approaches? How did you get on the same page? You still have different approaches? You know, what's kind of the dynamic there?
Yeah, I feel pretty lucky because he's not a super spender. He definitely came into the relationship investing as well. You know, that was really pure luck because that wasn't sort of like my driving factor. When we first started, I definitely have always made more money than him. He's been doing different things. He got his marketing degree, and he's finally found a good fit out here in Washington so that he can actually start to make some money. So this year has actually been the first year that he may surpass me, but he's always tried to invest what he could. I think for many years, he never had the option to have like a 401k. So he has more in like a brokerage account. I know he dabbled in a little silver once, and that was not a good move. It might be doing okay now. I don't know. But he's never been a spender, which I think is really a bigger key because we really don't fight about overspending in certain areas. He also stays home to work every day. So his expenditures are not really on gas, and he doesn't really like to buy many clothes because he doesn't have to look really good for work every day. So it works in my favor, I think. I am a little bit more frugal, but in general, we're on the same page. We try to stay on the same page. I will talk about money. We both would love to have like $1 million at 40, and I think we're probably on track to get that. I know his goal this year is to have 750 at the end of the year if it's like a fantastic year, but I don't know. That's like a reach.
Oh, it's good. It's a good answer. I appreciate you sharing it. And I want to just go back to something that Jace asked or that you mentioned when Jace asked a question is managing the risk. that maybe your husband wants to be a little bit more aggressive. How do you manage it? I think we all face it regardless of age or net worth, right? Even if you're holding cash, you say to yourself, okay, should I put it in a Goldman Marcus account and earn whatever it's at now, 1.1 or something? Or should I stick it in the stock market? Or should I buy bonds, right? It's like this never-ending question of how much risk should I take? And if I'm holding cash to either buy a house, like you mentioned, or to buy an investment, what do I do with the cash while I'm waiting, right? So how do you view that? How do you both, working with your husband, obviously, how do you determine how much risk you guys want to take?
That's a good question. I think we're both pretty not risk averse, but we're just not super knowledgeable, say in like the real estate area. We've never bought our own house, so we've never closed on a house. We've never worked with a realtor. To then jump ahead and think about having to manage a property, or I don't know. I don't know how you do any of that. It stresses me out. I've read one Bigger Pockets book and I think I was turned off by real estate investing because I was like, oh my gosh, this is just too much. I would get a management company, definitely. For now, I think I am in a little bit of a limbo, mainly because literally that cash has kind of just come into our lives. So it would be a great time to utilize it with the low interest rates and get a house. We just happen to live in like a super expensive area, and I don't like any of the houses that I see in a $500,000 range. So that's when I think, okay, well, if I don't want to buy a house here, perhaps I want to buy a real estate investment property outside of Washington. And we've talked about that. I think he has even mentioned like maybe real estate is our next move, but we haven't acted on it. But once again, this is like newly come into our lives. I think I was sitting on like 40,000 cash for like way too long, probably the last 2 years or something. But sometimes the cash is a security blanket and does make you feel like you can sleep at night. I do try to max out every other vehicle. So I max out the 457, which is, $19,500. I max out the 403B. He maxes out his 401k. We try to max out Roths, which I think we did traditional last year, but we're going to only be able to do a Roth this year. So we try to max out everything else. So if we're sitting on a little bit of cash that we can utilize, maybe for some other type of investment, I think we're both pretty comfortable with that. Since we're having a baby this year, that's another reason we're probably just going to hold on to a little bit of cash. I won't be working for about 6 months during maternity leave, though I have kind of figured out a way to cover that and basically get paid for the entire time. But I guess I just know where he stands. We do talk about it frequently, but I guess planning for the future, maybe we're not doing a great job at that, because we don't really know what we want to do with this money. I'd show him houses. We both hate them. I don't really want to spend $1 million on a house because then my net worth is going to be negative $400,000. And I don't love that idea. And I don't think these houses are worth what they're being priced at. So what my plan is, and I think he's aware of this too, because we definitely talk about this, is that I probably will try to stay here for another 5 years, have a second child. I am very happy with my job. And I'm also really happy with the Washington Paid Family Medical Leave Act. And I think that we can save significant money in 5 years and then maybe go to a lower cost of living area when we're either at $1 million, or I would love to have 1.5, because I think it's like a 98% projectile that I would make it till I'm 100 years old or something, and the money would last. So I think 1.5 is really much better, but we're probably going to not stay in Washington. If I'm not needing to work here for the pay and he can work from home, then we'll probably leave to some other beautiful state, but with a lot lower cost of living.
Yeah, no, it's a good answer. Thank you. And you mentioned working, right, or 5 more years, 6 more years, and you mentioned the rat race at the beginning. Is that something that's on the radar for you guys to retire early? Is that on the radar for him?
I think it definitely is for me, mainly because I would love to stay home with children and not feel that I have to divide my time between being at home and also working. I do love my job, but it's always been purely for money. It's very fulfilling, the career I've gone into, but I've never been someone that's bored. A lot of people are like, well, what would you do from home? I have started businesses and moved across the country and things like that. So I don't feel, my mind is always kind of reaching further for what else life has in store. So I never really get bored. I don't think not working would make me feel bored. I think I would actually probably utilize my licenses and degrees and stuff in a different fashion. So I would like to stay home with kids. I'd like to have time with my family and children, and then make work for me in my life, not me feeling like I have to be full-time to make ends meet or anything like that.
Yeah, thanks. The house thing's hard, Jace, you've been through it a couple times. I'll eventually go through it when we leave New York. But, how much house to buy and how much to spend, and if it's going to be a starter home and how many kids you're going to have, and are you going to stay in it for 5 years? That's just a tough decision, I think, all around, right? And what you mentioned, how much to put into a house, right? Especially if you're trying to get ahead and invest. You're like, okay, if I don't do an FHA and I buy a $400,000 house, that takes $100,000, right?
Yeah.
Ish, if 80, 75, whatever, if I'm putting 20% down.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have about 20% for a $500,000 home. But when I look at those homes, they are the equivalent in Connecticut. They'd be like a $350,000 home, and they need work. And so I think I would just be really unhappy for the next 5 to 6 years. I think I've read that 6 years is like the happy sweet spot for when you should sell. But I don't want to be unhappy for 5 years and underwater, or at least have a negative net worth, because I've always had a positive net worth. Literally coming out of college, I had that $24,000. So I don't know what that feels like. I was thinking recently, I have never been in debt. I've had loans that I could easily pay, even pay off, but I've never been able to say like, oh, I have, negative $40,000 in student loans or something. And I don't know what that would do to me. I think I wouldn't like that feeling, but a lot of people live that way every single day. So I've been very, very lucky.
So you guys have no debt now, I assume.
Yeah, we both have never had student loan debt, and we don't own anything. So we do pay high taxes, but we don't own a house. We own our cars. I did buy a new car when I was like 23. Maybe that's a regret. Maybe not, because it's still running great, and I'm probably going to keep it for another 10 years. So that actually probably will turn into a good purchase. And then, both no debt. So thinking about going into debt is hard.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Do you guys budget? Do you do a strict budget monthly, or any budget at all?
We don't strictly budget. I do I want to know how much money I'm paying in utilities, or how much our expenses are every month. So I know our expenses are about $5,000 every month, sometimes more, sometimes a little less. I could probably cut that if I didn't want to eat organic and I didn't take road trips every now and then to see beautiful Washington and stuff like that. Like I'm okay with spending money in terms of what I value. So that's about $5,000 a month. And I think that's pretty equal to what we used to spend even in Connecticut. But I think I hear a lot of people spending like $2,500 in like these middle of the country states. So maybe that's in our future. I don't know if they're eating rice and beans or what, but we don't strictly budget. I just kind of know what we're spending every month. I do look at it and try to classify it in Mint, but that also frustrates me frequently because Mint doesn't do a great job all the time.
Totally. We hear that often. So, Chloe, we've discussed a little bit about your background and how you grew up, and your dad looking at, saying you could buy some Disney and some stuff. And did your husband grow up in a similar background?
I don't know how well his parents are doing. I think they're pretty middle income family. They're both working, still in their young 60s. And I think they're going to keep working until they feel comfortable. So I don't think they'll retire at 64 or whatever. But my parents are definitely not doing well and not well off. And that is a slight burden on me because I don't know what the expectation is on me. I moved 3,000 miles to probably partially get away from it and not feel like they could depend on me. But my parents got divorced when I was about 15. And I think my mom was a stay-at-home mom and my dad always worked multiple jobs. He still is constantly working. I think he changes like 10 jobs in 2 years, something like that. So I don't keep track anymore, but they both don't. I think he has an associate's degree and he's always been like a salesman, but he has put money in the stock market, and I hope there's still money in the stock market for him. He also was able to buy a house. He definitely came from the bottom and has tried to make a living, but it's never been easy for him. And I think that subtly is something I watched my whole life. My mom is definitely struggling because she does not have a college degree. She also is one of those people that really doesn't like having a boss or being disciplined or being expected to show up at 9 a.m. and having to leave at 5 and only getting one break. She likes to run her own course in life. So her jobs are very contracted with no benefits, and it's always a very scary situation because I never really know what her like healthcare situation is. I know there is $0 for retirement. So I'm probably her retirement investment, but I don't think we could live together all that well. So I think she might know that. If I had to say no, I think I'm strong enough to say no, but this is definitely this is a big question mark in our financial future because I don't know how much of a burden my parents might play into it. And I won't know until we're there because talking to them is nearly impossible. I think they're just betting on dying or something. It's really terrible, but I really think that my mom just thinks she won't have a retirement and it's not a deal. So let's not think about it. My father, I believe, wants to move to Thailand. And I think he might have enough for that. I hope. I'm in full support of that. If that's where he could have a happy retirement and his money could go further, we would totally visit him in Thailand. And that would be, maybe I'll end up in Thailand too. I don't know. But he did always try to put in that little seed of investing and saving. And he definitely helped start that thought process, but it might have just been innate in me to be more of a saver than a spender because of how my parents were living. And then I also had one college professor who taught us about the Roth IRA. And I wish I took his advice when I was, I guess, 18 years old, because he basically said, if you put in this much money, then calculate the exponential growth and you'll be a millionaire by 40 years old or something by just putting in this small amount of money now, and it'll all be tax free. And so that professor I still think of because that was a really good teaching moment for me. And I did start to look into things like that. And it was probably like playing on my mind. I opened my first Roth account, I think, when I was like 25. But my dad always said, if you have an option for a 401k, open it up, put some money in it. You won't even think about it. Just siphon some money off before you even realize that you're supposed to get paid that.
It's pretty remarkable hearing you just describe those little, I guess, seeds, if you will, that have planted and now have really made a remarkable impact on your life, I would say, in terms of the way that you view your financial life and doing what you've been able to do. How did you end up paying for school and becoming debt-free through all that?
So when I was a pretty good student, and I wouldn't say I'm not that intelligent. I'm pretty average in this whole investing thing. I just try to put my money in VTSAX and I don't really look at it and I don't really think about it. As a student, I think I was a good student. I think I had a 3.5 or something in high school. I got into a couple of good colleges. Some were private. And I knew I wanted to be a nurse. So my dad I had more scholarships and grants available to me if I went to the public school. And so my dad was like, I really think you should take the money. If this is who's going to give you more money than the private school, and the private school costs triple the amount, you should really go. You can probably get the same education in both these places. So I'm glad he said that. I don't remember him saying that, but I'm pretty sure he was the influence. And so I went with the public school. And now whenever I talk to people that want to be a nurse, I usually say all these schools, they need to be certified the same. They basically have to provide you a quality education that you will then pass the NCLEX exam. So you will essentially get the same education in any private or public school if it's teaching nursing to the bachelor level. So I definitely got a great education, passed my schooling. I had a lot of grants and a lot of scholarships. I did have one Perkins loan, and it wasn't for much. It might have been $10,000. But then I ended up working as an RN in an inner city hospital, and they ended up paying that off for me while I was working. All of this is to say it didn't come with like no trials. I was laid off as a nurse, and they didn't finish paying off that Perkins loan. I ended up finishing paying it off. I think it was like $3,000 or something, which was so easy to pay off. Even later on in my career, I've even been fired for not any patient care related thing, but really for a conference call, which is really ridiculous. So, I mean, I feel like I've gone through a lot, which has been really great to teach me never to trust the job you have. You're very expendable. Even as a nurse, you can be easily replaced, and never basically live paycheck to paycheck, because there's going to be a time when you're probably going to need the money that you've saved. And I feel like I've learned that at 26 years old with the first layoff. Did that answer the question? Are you?
Yeah. No, yeah, and it's a really good answer. I mean, what you just said, I think, is totally true, and I think we've had other people come on the show. I mean, the people that are searching for financial independence and the freedom, right? That's why it is, because you realize, look, at any point I could lose my job or something could happen, and so I think your point, 100% agree. I think a lot of us think sometimes that we're indispensable, or we work in a field maybe where we can always find a job, and yeah, you could probably move to a different state and find another nursing job, but you don't necessarily want to do that, especially if you have a couple kids or something, right? So I think it's a really good point to make.
Yeah, and the nursing field is great because there are plenty of jobs. And right now, I think with the pandemic, there's definitely a need for more nurses, and there's probably going to be not as many people interested in going into that field. Just like any business, it's a business, and they're always under. They're never making great money. They're always hurting in some way. And that's actually what happened with the first layoff is I had almost, there's like so many pain points because I had almost reached my 5-year mark where I would have been fully vested in their match. So that whole time I had been putting in money, I lost about $10,000, which I don't know what it would be now, but I'm sure it would have grown significantly. So I almost fought that, but I then didn't because I couldn't really. I was 20 days away from the 5-year mark. Just things don't always play out the way you want them to. So I think even though there's plenty of jobs out there, I probably wouldn't love every nursing job. I don't particularly want to work in a hospital. So I think all of that is why we've been saving. And then when I went to get my master's, I just went to a Southern online school, which was great because I already had connections with OBGYNs because I worked in the medical field. And so I was trained by the doctors in my location, but I did all of my papers and testing via online with a cheaper school because Southern schools are a little bit cheaper. So I went that route, even though I had looked at like Columbia in New York City. I decided not to do Columbia. And so I just paid off the master's education, and that was not that expensive. Now I think it is very expensive.
Right in line with your thought of having no debt, right?
Yes.
There you go. So just in closing here, just before we end up with some last words of advice, just going to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions. So what's the most expensive car you've ever purchased?
I purchased a $23,000 Nissan Rogue in 2011.
Okay. Well, what about most expensive meal out that you've personally paid for?
At least $200. That is not hard to do in the Seattle location or New York.
Right, with you there. What item or experiences is worth spending more money on to you? What's worth the money?
I definitely love travel, but I even don't think, it is worth spending money on, but there's so many ways to not spend money on travel. So we do the whole travel hacking thing. We have probably 500,000 points or something just waiting for this pandemic to be over. So we can travel on very cheap, but I do appreciate experiences over things.
Yeah. And on the flip side, what's not worth the money? What things, I guess, are not worth the money?
I think food is worth the money. So I that doesn't answer the question, but things that I really don't value, probably cars. I did buy a new car, but I would never do that again. My car's looking pretty old now, but I have no one to impress. So I just go from point A to point B. And if I can continue to do that, that would be good. I don't value $1 million homes in the West Coast because they look terrible, and some of them are just straight 70s. So they need so much work. But there's other things I don't value too, and I'm sorry, I can't think of others.
No, it's all good. Do you have a goal on what age you want to become a millionaire, or is that a goal for you?
I would love to become a millionaire by 40, but if I could do that sooner, I would really like to be like 1.5 by 40, because now I realize that's a safer bet to get us through the rest of our lives. And with children, I don't know how much they're going to cost us. So I think more money is probably better. So I think I'm going to be working at least until 40.
Okay. What's your annual household spending, if you know? How much do you spend a year?
I think we spend about $60,000. That'd be about $5,000 a month. And I wish it was lower, but that is what it is.
Okay. Have you ever used a financial advisor?
No, I've considered paying one by the hour, but I've never have. And I think I value more like tax. I think I would rather put my money towards an accountant, just because I would like to save more on taxes. And I think no. And no, I haven't.
Okay. And then as much as you're comfortable sharing here, what's been your range of household income through your working life?
So my income for most of my life was $60,000. I couldn't break that bubble for a really long time. So as a nurse, I made about $60,000. I went through 2008, and so there was no increases for a long time. Then that layoff. Then I was a nurse practitioner, and I couldn't get a full-time job. No matter where I looked, they just weren't available in Connecticut. So I was still making $60,000, though I was working less hours, and that was very frustrating. So we moved to Washington mainly because it's beautiful, and I did know that nurse practitioners get paid more on the West Coast than the East Coast. So now I'm full-time, and I make $130,000, and I'm very happy. My husband is in marketing, works from home. This year so far, he's made $100,000, but it's month by month, a lot of commission, so you don't really know. He might make $200,000 by the end of the year, or he might just stay at this point with like a little bit of money that his employer pays him just to keep him there. Yeah, that's where we're at today.
Well, that's awesome. Good for you guys. You have a super high income, and you know, as mentioned, you have a net worth of $650. You guys are going to get there in the next probably couple years here, right? 2-3 years, maybe.
That's what I'm hoping.
You're right there. So awesome. Congrats on your success. Thanks again, Chloe, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chloe.
Thanks for listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast with Clark Sheffield and Chase Mattinson. For more stories, investment opportunities, and information, check out our website at millionairesunveiled.com. See you next time when you'll hear from another everyday millionaire.